Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about March Madness. Okay, so we're going to talk about March Madness. As I'm filming it, the national championship versus Florida and Houston is tomorrow. But we're going to talk about everything that happened and my thoughts. So I'm looking at my best bracket right now. And how I had out of the, so when I look at my bracket, in the South region, which has Auburn, MSU, Michigan, Yale, New Mexico, North Carolina, etc., I had MSU coming out of there, and MSU and Auburn were the only teams I had correct that went farther than the first round. I got Creighton, Auburn, Iowa State, New Mexico, and MSU. So I had MSU winning it all because I thought that Auburn's run would come to an end because of their losing streak coming into the tournament. So now, when I go to the West, I got every game right other than Kansas winning to Arkansas, and I had St. John's in the Sweet 16. And then for the East, I had Bama coming out of there. Oh, to backtrack real quick. Out of the West, I had Florida. So now to go back to the East, the only game I got wrong was Vanderbilt and Bama versus Duke. I had Alabama because I thought Duke was too young. And then for the Midwest, I had Houston coming out of there, and I got Clemson wrong, Xavier wrong, Utah State wrong, and then I had Kentucky beating Tennessee. So then in my final four, I had MSU versus Florida and Bama versus Houston, and out of that I had Florida and Houston, and then in this bracket I have Houston winning it all. So that's a little bit of my thought process, but yeah. So let's go. So I'll talk about the women's, I guess, real quick too. So as I film this, I just got a notification that UConn won it. So I'll talk about my bracket. So I got a few games wrong, but I had a 99.2 completion, or whatever that is. I did all these on ESPN. So I had so the games I got wrong were, let's look at this. So Georgia Tech, and I'm pretty sure it was Richmond. Yes. And I went Georgia Tech on this bracket because I feel like every year there's at least one 9 seed that beats an 8 seed. And Richmond blew out Georgia Tech 74-49. So I got UCLA right, Ole Miss right, Baylor right, Florida State right, LSU right, and then I got MSU and Harvard right. I mean, wrong. I had Harvard winning. I don't like MSU personally because I'm a Michigan fan. But I picked Harvard because I felt like if MSU lost to someone, it would be Harvard. If not, they would lose to NC State in the next round. And I would be in an okay position. So NC State beat Vermont. And then we're going to stay in, I'm pretty sure, Region 1 yet. I had UCLA winning, Ole Miss winning, LSU winning, NC State winning, and then I had LSU beating number 2 NC State and number one UCLA beating number 5 Ole Miss. And then I had UCLA coming out of that. And then in the 4th region, I had USC winning. I had Cal winning, which was an 8 seed, which lost to a 9 seed. So I picked that 8 over 9 wrong. And so after that, I had Kansas State winning, Kentucky, Iowa, Oklahoma. And then in this bracket, I had Oklahoma State beating South Dakota State. In this bracket, it was my last bracket, and all my other brackets I had before this, I had South Dakota State, so I decided to take Oklahoma State and change it up. And then I had UConn. So then I had UConn beating Oklahoma State, which they didn't beat Oklahoma State, but they won. And then I had Iowa upsetting Oklahoma, which did not happen. And then I had Kentucky beating Kansas State, which did not happen. Also, they lost by 1 though. And then I had USC winning. So then I had USC beating Kansas State. They won by 6. And then I had Oklahoma losing to UConn, which would have been Iowa. But I had Iowa winning. So then I had USC versus UConn. And I had UConn beating USC, which I got lucky with that because Juju Watkins got hurt. I think they would have won. USC would have won if she was in. Okay, then the 2nd region with South Carolina, I had South Carolina winning. I had Utah winning, and they lost by 8 to number 9 Indiana. Number 9 Indiana, number 8 lost. And then I had Alabama losing to Green Bay. I don't remember making that pick. But Alabama won. I think my thought process was I'm just going to pick an upset and hope it happens. I know there's not a lot of upsets in women's basketball, but try to find a predict them sometimes. And then I had Maryland beating Norfolk State. I had West Virginia beating Columbia. North Carolina winning. And then I had Vanderbilt beating Oregon. And if you know, Oregon won by 4. And then I had Duke. And then Duke Okay. So then I had North Carolina versus West Virginia, and I had West Virginia beating North Carolina, and North Carolina won. And then I had South Carolina beating Maryland. No, I had South Carolina beating Indiana and Maryland beating Alabama. Then in the next round, South Carolina beat Maryland. And then I had Duke beating West Virginia, which is North Carolina. And then I had TCU beating Notre Dame. And then I had Texas beating Tennessee. And then I had South Carolina beating Duke. And that happened. South Carolina won by 4. And then Texas beat TCU by 11. So then in the Final Four, there was a 1, a 2, a 1, and a 1. Okay, that's better. And then as a Final Four, I had UCLA and UConn, and I had UConn winning. And then I had South Carolina versus Texas, and I had South Carolina winning. And then I had UConn winning it all. And what I said earlier, I got a notification. Probably it was actually 5 minutes into this recording. So now we're gonna go back to the men's because the championship is tomorrow for me. So my best bracket, I have 115 points total scored between each team. I kind of think that's high, but that also means each team scores 50, and I know Florida is very offensive, and I know Houston's very defensive. So it's going to be fun to see how that turns out. But in the ESPN preview, it says they say that Houston is actually favored 65.5% to 34.5%. And it's going to be LJ Cryer versus Walter Clayton Jr. I like Walter Clayton and Jr. better than Cryer because we don't know as much as what Cryer can do because of Cryer being hurt last year in the tournament. And then like in the last 5 games that each team's played, I would say probably I think it's Houston that had a harder path because they had to beat Gonzaga, and then they almost lost to Purdue, and then they blew out Tennessee, and then they only won by 3 versus Duke, which was one of the highest teams projected to win. So now I think Florida's gonna win. Well, I want to see what you guys think. I guess in my second best bracket, I have a few brackets. I had Florida versus Duke, and I had Duke winning that. they were pretty similar, but I really thought Drake could make a run this year in the tournament, but they didn't, which was actually surprising to me. So then, I guess we'll hat back to the women's and look at some information from that meeting. So it's UConn's 12th title, and they've been waiting 9 years. And so it's been the first time since, 2025? So 2016, I think. Yeah, so since 2016 they haven't won. And they blew out South Carolina 82-59. And then that broke their drought, and after and that broke their drought, and but then before that, from 2013 to 2016, they had a four they had a four they won 4 championships in a row after winning 4 championships in a row from 2013 to 16 behind Superstars. The Huskies hit the series of roadblocks with tough losses and injuries and heartbreaks. So, I think there's only 4 more minutes left. Depends how much I cut down while editing it. But I guess it's more breaking news. It's not really March Madness. But Alex Ovechkin scored, I think it's the, can I find it real quick? Alex Ovechkin scores his 895th goal today. And that gives him the goals in a career record set by Wayne Gretzky, which is considered the greatest to play in the NHL. But I also want to hear what you guys think about all the upsets in this year's bracket, because there was really none other than a 10 seed, a few 6 seeds, and then McNeese beating Clemson. But that was really it. And then the last perfect bracket though it got broken against Illinois versus Kentucky. They had Illinois winning, so that would be the second round, and they were only, I'm pretty sure, I don't remember if that was one of the nightcaps or was it the last day of that round, but they were only a few games away from having the record for most games in a row. So that was cool. And then we'll look at who has the best bracket. So some guy on ESPN had has Houston winning, and he had Florida and Houston. So he had Auburn, Florida, Houston, and Duke. And for his bracket, dang, he had the South, the East, right? So he had Michigan, Creighton, Auburn, and all that. And then in the West and Midwest, he got a combined 3 wrong. He got Memphis. He had Memphis beating Colorado State, and Drake losing to Missouri, and then he did not get the McNeese upset right either. Which now a lot of people had that in out of my 20 plus brackets, I only had them winning once or twice. So thank you for watching. I'm joking. But yeah. So it's not a bad bracket. And then who else is tied with them? So another guy, he had similar, but he had McNeese, but he had Creighton beating Louisville. No, he had Louisville beating Creighton, and UCLA losing to Utah State, and then he also got the Memphis game wrong. So Colorado State losing kind of hurt both of them in a way. But he has Florida. Let's just go look at a random one. We'll look at this one. So this one had North Carolina and Marquette wrong, which doesn't completely surprise me. And then they had North Carolina beating Iowa, which I had the same thought too. I thought North Carolina was going to go farther than the first round. And then he also had Memphis winning. And then the other upset was the Clemson-McNeese game. So thank you for watching.